The church hall was suffocating, the air thick with judgment as Ethan's father stood at the podium, his voice booming like a gavel. "My son," he spat, eyes burning into Ethan, "is filthy, a sinner who's turned his back on God." Ethan, 25, sat frozen in the front row, his heart shattering as the congregation's whispers grew into a roar. Ethan had known this day might come. Growing up in Willow Creek, a conservative town in rural Ohio, he'd spent years hiding who he was. But when he'd mustered the courage to tell his parents he was gay, he hadn't expected a public execution of his soul in front of the entire church. His mother, Diane, sat beside him, her hands clasped so tightly her knuckles were white, her silence louder than his father's words. Ethan's younger sister, Lily, barely 16, stared at the floor, tears streaking her face. He stood, legs trembling, and walked out, the weight of 100 eyes boring into his back. The oak doors slammed shut behind him, and the autumn air hit his face like a slap. He didn't look back. Not when his father shouted after him. Not when the gravel crunched under his boots as he headed for his beat-up Chevy. He drove to the edge of town, to the only place he felt safe, the park where he'd met Caleb. Caleb, 26, was everything Ethan wasn't. Confident, unapologetically himself. They'd met 6 months ago at a community art fair, where Caleb's paintings, vibrant bursts of color, had drawn Ethan in like a moth to a flame. Caleb had grown up in Cleveland, openly gay since high school, and his quiet strength had given Ethan the courage to dream of a life beyond Willow Creek's suffocating expectations. That night, as Ethan sat on their favorite bench, Caleb found him, his presence a lifeline. "You didn't deserve that," Caleb said, sitting beside him, his voice steady but laced with anger. "No one does." Ethan's throat tightened. "He's my father. Caleb, how do you come back from that?" Caleb reached for his hand, his touch warm and grounding. "You don't go back. You move forward. With me." For the first time that day, Ethan felt like he could breathe. But the pain of his father's words lingered, a wound that would take more than love to heal. He didn't know then that this moment would set off a chain of events that would test his heart, his faith, and the very meaning of family. Over the next few weeks, Ethan stayed with Caleb in his small apartment above the town's only bookstore. The space was cramped, filled with canvases and the faint smell of paint. But it was a haven. Ethan tried to rebuild, taking a job at a local coffee shop, avoiding the church and anyone who might carry his father's venom. But Willow Creek was small, and gossip spread like wildfire. Old friends crossed the street to avoid him. His mother sent a single text, "I'm praying for you." His father sent nothing. Lily, though, was different. She'd sneak out to meet Ethan at the park, her defiance a quiet rebellion against their father's iron grip. "He's wrong," she whispered one evening, her voice fierce despite her tears. "You're still my brother." Ethan hugged her, his heart aching. "You don't have to choose. Lily, I don't want you to lose them." But Lily shook her head. "I already have." As winter crept closer, Ethan and Caleb's relationship deepened. Caleb taught him to cook, laughing when Ethan burned the pasta. They spent nights talking about dreams Ethan's of opening a community center for kids like him, Caleb's of showcasing his art in a big city gallery. But the shadow of Ethan's family loomed. He missed his mother's quiet strength, the way she'd hum hymns while cooking dinner. He even missed his father, despite everything the man who'd taught him to ride a bike, now a stranger who'd branded him filthy. One night, as snow dusted the windows, Caleb found Ethan staring at an old family photo. "You're allowed to miss them," Caleb said softly. "It doesn't mean you're weak." Ethan nodded, but the ache in his chest grew. He didn't know how to let go of the family he'd lost her if he even wanted to. The town's judgment was relentless. But Caleb's love was a shield, and Lily's loyalty a spark of hope. Yet Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that something bigger was coming. Something that would force him to confront the past he was trying so hard to escape. Winter tightened its grip on Willow Creek, and Ethan's life began to settle into a fragile rhythm. The coffee shop job paid enough to cover his share of Caleb's rent, and the routine of steaming milk and wiping counters gave him a strange sense of normalcy. But every Sunday, when church bells echoed through town, Ethan felt his father's words claw at him again. Filthy. The memory burned, a wound that refused to heal. Caleb noticed the way Ethan's shoulders tensed on those mornings. He'd pull Ethan close, distracting him with a sketch or a silly story about his art school days. "You're not what he says you are," Caleb would murmur, his voice a steady anchor. Ethan wanted to believe him, but doubt lingered like frost on glass. Lily's visits became a lifeline. She'd show up at the park, her backpack slung over one shoulder, her eyes bright with stories about school or the latest book she'd read. But she also brought news of home tensions Ethan hadn't anticipated. "Dad's been quieter," she said one evening, kicking at the snow. "Mom's been fighting with him. She doesn't say it, but I think she misses you." Ethan's heart twisted. He wanted to reach out to his mother, but the silence between them felt like a wall too high to climb. Instead, he focused on Lily, helping her with homework or sneaking her into the bookstore to read with Caleb. Those moments felt like stealing back pieces of the family he'd lost. But Willow Creek wasn't done with Ethan. One afternoon, as he wiped down tables at the coffee shop, a group of men from the church walked in. Among them was Pastor John, his father's closest friend, whose sermons had shaped Ethan's childhood. The men didn't order anything. They just stared, their silence louder than any words. Ethan's hands shook as he cleaned, but he kept his head down, refusing to give them the satisfaction of a reaction. That night, he told Caleb about it, his voice tight with anger. "They think they can shame me into leaving, like I'm some disease they can cure by glaring." Caleb's jaw clenched. "They're wrong, and they're scared because you're stronger than they'll ever be." Ethan wanted to believe that, too. But the encounters didn't stop. A week later, someone spray-painted "Sinner" on Caleb's car. The word was sloppy, red paint dripping like blood. Caleb scrubbed it off without a word, but Ethan saw the worry in his eyes. For the first time, Ethan wondered if staying in Willow Creek was worth the cost, not just to him, but to Caleb. "I'm dragging you into this," Ethan said one night, his voice breaking. They were curled up on the couch, a half-finished painting of a sunset on the easel nearby. "You don't deserve this hate." Caleb took Ethan's face in his hands, his gaze fierce. "I chose you, Ethan. All of the Susit's worth it. Don't you dare think otherwise." Those words carried Ethan through the next few weeks. But the pressure kept building. Lily started getting into trouble at school, her defiance against their father spilling over into arguments with teachers. Ethan felt responsible, as if his choice to live openly had fractured her world, too. He tried to talk to her, but she brushed it off, insisting she was fine. Then came the letter. It arrived in a plain envelope, slipped under Caleb's apartment door. Ethan's hands trembled as he opened it, recognizing his mother's handwriting. "I need to see you. Please. The diner. Tomorrow at noon." No explanation. No apology, just a plea. Ethan showed it to Caleb, his heart pounding. What if it's a trap? What if Dad's there? Caleb studied the letter, then met Ethan's eyes. What if it's not? What if she's trying to reach you? Ethan didn't sleep that night. He lay awake, torn between hope and fear, wondering if his mother's silence was finally breaking her if this was another blow waiting to land. By morning, he'd made up his mind. He'd go to the diner. He'd face whatever came next. Not just for himself, but for the family he still loved, even if they'd turned their backs on him. The diner smelled of grease and coffee, its neon sign buzzing faintly as Ethan pushed through the door. His stomach churned, but he squared his shoulders, scanning the booths for his mother. She sat alone in the corner, her hands wrapped around a mug, her face pale and drawn. For a moment, Ethan saw the woman who'd bandaged his knees as a kid, not the one who'd sat silent while his father tore him apart. He slid into the booth across from her. "Mom," he said, his voice quieter than he'd meant. Diane's eyes flicked up, filled with something Ethan couldn't quite read: guilt, maybe, or fear. "Ethan," she whispered, "I'm so sorry." The words hit like a punch. He'd waited months for them, but now they felt fragile, like they might shatter if he pushed too hard. "Why now?" he asked. "Why didn't you say anything that day?" Diane's hands trembled. "I was scared. Your father, he's always been the one to decide what's right. I didn't know how to stand up to him." Ethan's chest tightened. "You let him call me filthy. In front of everyone." She flinched, tears welling. "I know. I failed you. But I'm here now. Ethan, I want to make this right." They talked for hours, the diner emptying around them. Diane admitted she'd been questioning the church's teachings, wrestling with her faith and her love for her son. She hadn't told Ethan's father about this meeting, a small act of rebellion that gave Ethan a flicker of hope. But she also shared something else. Lily was struggling, acting out more, and their father's anger was turning inward, fracturing the family. "I want you back in our lives," Diane said, her voice breaking. "But I don't know how to fix this." Ethan didn't have answers either. He left the diner feeling lighter but more confused, the weight of his mother's words both a balm and a burden. When he told Caleb about it, Caleb listened quietly, then pulled him into a hug. "She's trying," he said. "That's a start." But the town's hostility didn't ease. A few days later, Ethan found a note tucked under the coffee shop's door: "Leave, or you'll regret it." He showed it to Caleb, who insisted they go to the police. The officer, an old friend of Ethan's father, dismissed it as a prank, his smirk saying more than his words. Ethan felt the walls closing in, the town he'd once called home now a battlefield. Caleb, though, refused to let Ethan spiral. He dragged him to an art supply store in the next town, insisting they paint something together. The act of creating mixing colors, laughing over Ethan's clumsy brushstrokes, felt like defiance, a way to reclaim a piece of himself. But even as they painted, Ethan's thoughts kept drifting to his mother's plea and Lily's struggles. He wanted to believe in reconciliation, but the scars of that day in the church ran deep. Then came the phone call. It was Lily, her voice frantic. "Ethan, you need to come home. Dad's losing it. He found Mom's journal's been writing about you, about wanting to fix things. He's furious." Ethan's heart raced. "Is she okay? Are you?" "For now," Lily said. "But please, Ethan, I'm scared." Caleb drove as Ethan sat rigid in the passenger seat, the familiar streets of Willow Creek blurring past. When they pulled up to the house, Ethan's childhood home, the lights were on, and raised voices spilled through the open windows. Ethan didn't know what he'd find inside, but he knew one thing. He wasn't the scared boy who'd walked out of that church. He was ready to fight for his family, not the one his father wanted, but the one Ethan believed in. The front door creaked as Ethan pushed it open, the sound slicing through the shouting inside. His father, Richard, stood in the living room, a crumpled notebook in his fist. his face red with rage. Diane was backed against the wall, her eyes wide with fear, while Lily hovered near the stairs, clutching her phone. Caleb stayed close behind Ethan, a silent pillar of strength. "Get out," Richard roared when he saw Ethan. "You're not welcome here." Ethan's heart pounded, but he held his ground. "I'm here for Mom and Lily, not you." Richard's eyes narrowed, the notebook trembling in his grip. "You've poisoned this family. Your mother's been writing blasphemy, defending your sin." Diane stepped forward, her voice shaking but firm. "It's not a sin, Richard. It's our son." The room went silent, the weight of her words hanging heavy. Ethan stared at his mother, a surge of pride mixing with his fear. Lily rushed to his side, grabbing his arm. "I called him," she whispered. "I didn't know what else to do." Richard's face twisted, and for a moment, Ethan thought he might lash out. But instead, he threw the notebook to the floor and stormed out, slamming the door so hard the walls shook. Diane sank onto the couch, sobbing, and Ethan knelt beside her, his own emotions a tangled mess. "I didn't mean for this," Diane whispered. "I just wanted to understand you, Ethan, to love you right." Ethan took her hand, his throat tight. "You're trying, Mom. That's more than I ever expected." Caleb helped Lily gather her things, and they all left for the apartment, the night air cold against their skin. Back at Caleb's, Diane sat quietly, staring at the paintings on the walls as if seeing them for the first time. Lily curled up on the couch, exhausted but safe. Ethan felt a strange mix of relief and dread. His mother and sister were with him, but his father's anger was a storm still brewing. Over the next few days, Diane stayed with them, sleeping on a pull-out couch in the cramped apartment. She and Ethan talked late into the night, piecing together years of silence. She admitted she'd been reading about acceptance, questioning the church's teachings, but feared losing Richard completely. Ethan listened, his heart softening, but he couldn't ignore the reality. His father wasn't ready to change. The town's hostility escalated. Ethan's car tires were slashed outside the coffee shop, and Caleb's art was defaced at a local exhibit. The police, predictably, did nothing. Ethan felt trapped, torn between protecting those he loved and the urge to flee Willow Creek for good. Caleb, though, had other ideas. "We fight back," Caleb said one evening, his eyes blazing. "Not with fists, but with truth. Let's show them who we are." He proposed an art show, a public event to showcase his work in Ethan's story. Ethan was hesitant, but Caleb's passion was infectious. They spent days planning, renting a small community center, spreading the word through flyers and social media. Lily helped, her excitement a spark that kept Ethan going. Even Diane offered to bake cookies for the event, a small gesture that felt monumental. As the date approached, Ethan's nerves grew. What if no one came? Worse, what if his father showed up, ready to tear it all down? But Caleb's hand in his, steady and warm, reminded him why they were doing this. This wasn't just about art or love, it was about claiming their place in a world that wanted to erase them. The community center buzzed with nervous energy as Ethan and Caleb set up for the art show. Caleb's paintings lined the walls, vibrant landscapes, intimate portraits, and one piece that stopped Ethan's heart, a depiction of their park bench, bathed in sunset, with two figures holding hands. A small plaque beside it read, "For Ethan, my home." Ethan's eyes stung, but he blinked back tears, focusing on arranging chairs and tables. Lily darted around, hanging fairy lights, her enthusiasm infectious. Diane arranged trays of cookies, her hands steady despite the worry in her eyes. "What if he comes?" she whispered to Ethan. glancing at the door. Then we face him, Ethan said, surprising himself with his resolve. This is our truth, Mom, not his. As people trickled in, Ethan's nerves tightened. A few were familiar faces, co-workers from the coffee shop, Caleb's artist friends from Cleveland, but most were strangers, drawn by the flyers or curiosity. Ethan braced for hostility, but instead, he saw nods of appreciation, even tears as people read the stories behind Caleb's paintings. One piece, a stark black and white sketch of a boy walking away from a church, was labeled Ethan's truth. It was raw, exposed, and Ethan felt both vulnerable and powerful seeing it. Halfway through the evening, a murmur rippled through the crowd. Ethan turned to see Pastor John and a few church members at the door. His stomach dropped, but Caleb squeezed his hand. "We've got this," he whispered. Pastor John approached, his expression unreadable. "I didn't expect this," he said, gesturing to the paintings. "It's honest." Ethan waited for the judgment, but it didn't come. Instead, the pastor lingered, studying the art, then left without a word. It wasn't acceptance, but it wasn't condemnation either. A crack in the wall Ethan hadn't expected. As the night wound down, a young woman approached Ethan, her eyes bright with tears. "I'm like you," she whispered. "I thought I was alone here." "Thank you." Ethan's throat closed, and he could only nod, the weight of her words settling deep. But the high didn't last. The next morning, Ethan woke to a call from Lily, her voice trembling. "Dad's at the house. He's packing Mom's things. He says she's not welcome anymore." Ethan's heart sank. He and Caleb rushed to the house, Diane trailing behind, her face pale. Richard stood in the driveway, tossing suitcases into the yard. "You chose him," he shouted at Diane. "You chose that filth over me." Diane stood firm, tears streaming down her face. "I chose my son, and I'd do it again." Ethan stepped between them, his voice steady. "This isn't about you, Dad. It's about us trying to live." Richard's face contorted, but he said nothing, climbing into his truck and peeling away. Diane collapsed into Ethan's arms, sobbing, and Lily clung to them both. Caleb watched, his jaw tight, but his presence was enough to keep Ethan grounded. They moved Diane's things to the apartment, the small space now impossibly crowded but filled with a strange warmth. Ethan felt the weight of his choices. His mother and sister had lost their home because of him. But as he looked at them, laughing over a makeshift dinner, he realized something else. They were building a new home, one where love didn't come with conditions. Spring arrived in Willow Creek, but the thaw didn't reach Ethan's father. Richard had retreated into silence, avoiding the family, though rumors swirled that he'd been clashing with Pastor John at church. Ethan tried to focus on the present, his mother settling into a job at the bookstore, Lily thriving in school again, but the absence of his father was a void he couldn't ignore. Caleb's art show had sparked something in the town. A few locals started small gestures of support, a kind word at the coffee shop, a donation to Ethan's dream of a community center. But the hostility hadn't vanished. Anonymous threats still appeared, slipped under doors or scrawled on walls. Ethan and Caleb reported them, but the police remained dismissive, their loyalty to Richard clear. One evening, as Ethan and Caleb walked through the park, a group of teens shouted slurs from across the street. Caleb tensed, but Ethan pulled him forward. "They're just kids," he said, though his voice shook. "They'll learn." Caleb stopped, turning to face him. "You don't have to be strong all the time, Ethan. It's okay to be angry." Ethan nodded, the weight of the past months crashing over him. "I'm tired, Caleb. Tired of fighting, of losing pieces of myself to this town. Caleb's eyes softened. Then let's leave. Start fresh somewhere else. You. Me. Lily. Your momway can build something new. The idea was tempting, but Ethan wasn't ready to run. Not yet. He wanted to believe Willow Creek could change, that his father could change. But doubt gnawed at him, especially when Lily came home one day with a bruise on her arm, the result of a schoolyard fight over her traitor brother. I'm fine, Lily insisted, but Ethan saw the hurt in her eyes. He pulled her into a hug, promising to protect her, though he wasn't sure how. Diane, too, was struggling, her confidence from the art show fading under the weight of her broken marriage. Then came an unexpected ally, Pastor John. He showed up at the apartment one evening, his face lined with exhaustion. I've been wrong, he said, his voice low. I've let fear guide me instead of love. I want to help. Ethan was skeptical, but Pastor John's actions spoke louder than his words. He started preaching about compassion, subtly challenging the church's stance on Ethan's identity. It wasn't a full reversal, but it was enough to stir whispers and hope. Caleb, meanwhile, was planning another art show, this one bigger, to be held in Cleveland. He wanted Ethan to speak, to share his story publicly. Ethan hesitated, the thought of exposing himself again terrifying. But Caleb's belief in him was unshakable. You're not just surviving, Ethan, he said. You're inspiring. As the Cleveland show approached, Ethan began writing his speech, pouring his heart into words about love, loss, and resilience. Lily and Diane helped, their input making the story not just his, but theirs. The process was cathartic, but Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that his father's shadow still loomed, waiting to strike. The night before the show, Ethan found a letter in the mailbox. No return address. The handwriting was unmistakable Richard's. I need to talk. Tomorrow. After your show. Please. Ethan's heart raced, torn between hope and dread. Was this a chance at reconciliation? Or another trap? He didn't know. But as he looked at Caleb, Lily, and Diane, he knew he wasn't facing it alone. The Cleveland Art Gallery was a world away from Willow Creek, its high ceilings and bright lights a stark contrast to the town's dim judgment. Ethan stood at the podium, his speech trembling in his hands. As a crowd of strangers and supporters watched, Caleb's paintings glowed behind him, each one a piece of their story, love, pain, and defiance woven into color and light. My father called me filthy, Ethan began, his voice steady despite the knot in his chest. He said it in front of everyone I'd ever known. But I'm here to tell you that love isn't filthy. It's the cleanest thing I've ever felt. The room was silent, then erupted in applause, the sound washing over Ethan like a tide. Lily beamed from the front row, Diane's eyes shining with pride. The show was a success, with Caleb's art drawing offers from galleries and collectors. But Ethan's speech stole the night, his raw honesty resonating with people who approached him afterward, sharing their own stories of rejection and hope. For the first time, Ethan felt like he was part of something bigger, a community that saw him, not as a sinner, but as a survivor. As the crowd thinned, Ethan's thoughts turned to the letter from his father. He hadn't told Caleb or his family yet, unsure of what it meant. When they returned to Willow Creek that night, exhausted but elated, Ethan found Richard waiting outside the apartment, his truck parked crookedly on the street. Ethan, Richard said, his voice rough, almost broken. I need to talk. Ethan's heart pounded, but he nodded, leading his father inside. Caleb, Diane, and Lily stayed close, their presence a quiet shield. Richard sat stiffly on the couch, his hands clasped, avoiding eye contact. "I was wrong," he said finally, the words sounding like they'd been ripped from him. "I thought I was protecting you, protecting our family. But I was wrong." Ethan waited, his emotions a storm. Part of him wanted to forgive, to bridge the gap. But the hurt was still raw. "You humiliated me," he said. "You broke Mom and Lily's hearts. Why now?" Richard's eyes met his, filled with something Ethan hadn't seen in months' regret. "I've been talking to Pastor John. He showed me your speech online. I didn't know how much I'd hurt you." Diane stepped forward, her voice soft but firm. "You hurt all of us, Richard. But we're still a family. We can try again." The room was heavy with silence, the weight of years of pain and love colliding. Ethan looked at Caleb, who nodded slightly, his eyes saying, "This is your choice." Ethan took a breath, feeling the strength of his mother, sister, and partner behind him. "I want to believe you," Ethan said, "but it's going to take more than words." Richard nodded, tears in his eyes. "I know. I'm here to try." It wasn't a perfect resolution, but it was a start. As Richard left, promising to return, Ethan felt a flicker of hope, not just for his father, but for the family they could become. Summer bloomed in Willow Creek, and with it, a cautious new beginning. Ethan's father started visiting. Awkward at first, his apologies stilted but sincere. They met at the park, the same bench where Ethan and Caleb had built their love, now a place for tentative healing. Richard listened more than he spoke, asking about Ethan's life, Caleb's art, Lily's dreams. It wasn't easy. Trust was a fragile thing, but each conversation chipped away at the wall between them. Diane found her own strength, volunteering at the community center where Ethan was laying the groundwork for his youth program. Lily, now more confident, helped organize events, her laughter a reminder of what they'd fought for. Caleb's art career soared, with galleries in Cleveland and beyond clamoring for his work. But he stayed rooted in Willow Creek, committed to Ethan and their shared vision. The town itself began to shift. Pastor John's sermons grew bolder, calling for love over judgment. And a few church members reached out to Ethan, some with apologies, others with quiet support. The threats didn't stop entirely, but they were fewer, drowned out by the growing voices of acceptance. Ethan's community center took shape, a safe space for kids who felt like they didn't belong. A legacy of his pain turned into purpose. One evening, as the family gathered at the apartment for dinner, Richard brought a photo album, old pictures of Ethan as a kid, laughing, carefree. "I want to remember this," Richard said, his voice thick. "And I want to know you now." Ethan looked at his father, seeing not the man who'd called him filthy, but one trying to rebuild. "We're here," Ethan said. "All of us." Caleb squeezed Ethan's hand under the table, and Lily grinned, passing the mashed potatoes. Diane's eyes met Ethan's, a silent promise of love unbroken. The road ahead wasn't perfect, scars lingered, and forgiveness was a journey, but they were walking it together. 5 months after that night in the church, Ethan stood in the park, watching the sunset with Caleb. The bench beside them held their carved initials, a quiet testament to their love. Ethan no longer felt like an outcast. He'd lost a version of his family, but he'd built a new one, stronger, bound by truth and love. And in that moment, with Caleb's hand in his and his family waiting at home, Ethan knew he was exactly where he belonged.